Hello and welcome to Talk Time on Pan-African Television. This week we are taking a look at the Ekropong constituency and we're going to look at all the different things in that constituency. Welcome to Talk Time. Hello and welcome back to Talk Time. And this week, as I indicated from the beginning, we're taking a look at the Ekropong constituency and we're going to look at the challenges in that constituency, how those difficulties may be resolved and so on. And we are very, very fortunate to have with us in the studio Appiah Kubi, who is the National Democratic Congress candidate for the constituency. So you're welcome to the studio.
Thank you, sir.
Why did you become the candidate of the National Democratic Congress? Why didn't you join any other political party?
Well, I think it's because of what I think the party stands for. And it's been a vehicle that can take the country into the level that we aspire for it to be. And so there are different vehicles, there are different political groupings, but I believe that the program and policies and the history of the NDC is one that I have confidence in that it could move our country to the level that we all desire it to be.
First of all, let's start with the history. What about the history of the NDC is so fantastic? You have the CPP, which traces its history to Nkrumah, the UP, which traces its history to Dankwa and Buzi and so on. What's so fantastic about the history of NDC?
I think for some time, the political space has been dominated by the main parties, NPP and then the NDC. Of course, we can go into the history about the independence struggle and all that, which parties played various roles. But from this Fourth Republic, I believe that the actions and programs of the main players within the political space, the NDC has demonstrated its commitment to the welfare of the masses of the people through their programs, its interest in decentralization, its interest and attention to developing rural communities, and just the main focus on social interventions and so on. It's one that is worth mentioning. Again, the party over the period has given opportunity for people from various sections of our society, regardless of where you come from, how old you are, your aspirations and so on. It's offered a certain platform for everybody that shows him or herself worthy of serving the country. And I think that is one of the main attractions I find to that party.
All the parties say the same.
Well, but they do differently. And I think the NDC has done or has demonstrated it beyond the rhetoric.
How?
I mean, you look at the opportunity offers people. I mean, just look at the succession of the party in terms of who leads the party, from His Excellency Jerry Rawlings through to His Excellency Professor Ivan Satamils, and then to the current leader, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. We've seen different trends in other parties, which we cannot mention here, but all political watchers can attest to this fact that the NDC opens up more. It offers opportunity for people who justify themselves that they can serve, rather than operating along a certain tribal and ethnocentric route.
You look very, very young, and just as a matter of curiosity, perhaps I should ask, how old are you?
I'm 30 years old.
And why would you want to become a parliamentarian at 30 years? What is the driving force? What is pushing a 30-year-old young man like you to get into parliament rather than, say, doing your PhD or master's? Why?
Well, I think that regardless of how old you are, you have aspirations, you live within communities, you engage with people, and the community and the society you find yourself, if you are one that is interested in their well-being, reflects something that you would want to project. and coming from a certain background, young, engaging with my peers, and hearing and sharing in their aspirations, I think that once the Constitution does not, grants the right for anybody above a certain limit to contest for such position, I think that I have a fair idea of what my peers need, what my community wants, and I think that I can best articulate and advocate for those things to come into my natives and my electoral domain.
What are the things that your community needs? The Kropong, what is the community anyway? Which parts of the Eastern region form the Kropong constituency, and what do you think their needs are?
Well, I would attempt to to voice out some of the needs, because obviously I cannot know all the needs, but from my engagement with the people.
First of all, let's define the constituency. Where is that constituency? How big is it? Which are the components and so on?
Well, the Kropong is located in the southeastern part of our country, and it spans from Obosmase through to Kropong up the latter hills, and then it shares the boundary with Okrasi, that is the New Jabing South, Koforidua, and it's made up of we call it the lower hill and then the upper hill. That is those up the ridge and then those down the ridge, which is, when you look at those down the ridge, it is mainly settler communities, rural settlements, people who are mainly engaged in farming and agriculture. Those up the ridge are mainly the working people. That's people who are engaged in petty trading, people who are engaged in the teaching profession and so on. So it's a constituency that has the whole mix, different people from different backgrounds engage in different economic activities, and it's quite a densely populated constituency. It has about 60,000 registered voters, and it's mainly a youthful constituency. It falls within the Kwapem traditional area, with the paramount to be in the Kropong, and so it's quite an old town with a lot of interesting dynamics and features.
Now, what are the needs of these people who live in the Kropong constituency?
Well, like I said, depending on where one finds themselves, the needs are different. For example, those down the ridge who are mainly in the rural settlements are people who are engaged in subsistence farming, people who are engaged in small-scale agriculture, and they are mainly people who are interested in just expanding their business, getting the needed support for what they are engaged in, farm inputs, getting the needed skill to ensure that they are able to get the proper yield from their cultivation. Those up the hills are mainly the middle class with different aspirations, issues about employment, issues about access to water, which cuts across the constituency, issues about education, which cuts across. And so there are some of the issues like water and sanitation, issues like healthcare, issues like employment, which cuts across the constituency. But there are area-specific challenges, which, depending on where you find yourself, those issues come up. And so I think it's just not different from other parts of the country. It's just one of the various dynamics within the country.
What are some of the area-specific problems?
Well, for example, you have a community like Kwamoso, which relied heavily on the state-owned enterprise. The whole community was revolving around the state farm that Osajifo built. And with the collapse of the farm, you find out that they've not been able to harness the natural resource, that's the land and all that comes with it. And so many of the people have gone back to subsistence farming. Many of the people have relocated to where they came from. And so it's virtually become a ghost town. And so it is one of the areas where we have the resource that with the needed governmental support, we can revive and revamp that industry. And so that is one of the challenges. You have towns like Old Mangwase and so on, which relied heavily on the rail network, which upon the collapse of the railway network, you feel that those communities are feeling the heat, because even access to some of their communities and how to transport their goods, and so on is a challenge. And so there are communities that have issues based on the history, and there are communities that are also benefiting from the current trend. For example, when you come up the ridge, now most of the people prefer to relocate from the rural areas up the ridge. The migration as a result of some of these collapsed structures that existed before is what is causing some of these challenges. Those up the hill are mainly middle class and more urbanized in terms of their demographics. But I think their issues are issues to do with employment, issues to do with even the continuous or the aggressive takeover of their lands by, foreign, because the Akuapem is now becoming a dormitory block to Accra. And so there's a lot of scramble for the lands in the Akuapem, and you find a lot of these issues also coming up. And I feel that there's a need for a proper land tenure relation so that some of these conflicts could be resolved. So there are a lot of issues, and I don't think we can address all of them.
Your party has been in power for 8 years. Now, if after 8 years, the people in your constituency have all these issues, all these problems, what does it say about your party and what it has done in the constituency?
Well, I think that development is a process, and every government comes in to contribute their quota in terms of alleviating the plight of the people. And so, yes, there may be challenges, but that is not to say that the government has also not demonstrated its commitment to resolving them. And so for example, water was a major challenge for people of Akuapem up the ridge. And it's a fact that upon the completion of the Pond Water expansion project, now that problem has significantly improved. And so people in Akuapem are grateful for that. You look at the expansion in infrastructure. Just about 2 weeks ago, I went to one of our communities, which is called, Bolo Kofi. The distance between Bolo to Adoso, if any pregnant woman will have to be transported for a long stretch. But now, as we speak, they benefited from a CHIPS compound. And when I was in the community, they were so grateful for government's interest in locating a CHIPS compound there and so on. You look at areas like education and massive infrastructural development in institutions like the Akuapem Secondary School. Even the School for the Blind has benefited enormously from teachers' bungalow to girls' dormitory, the School for the Deaf, same. Mangwase Secondary School, same. And so government is doing its bit, and I believe that with a lot more time and a lot more commitment, I feel that a lot can be achieved. But government has demonstrated that it is committed to solving some of these challenges. It will not come off, or cannot be resolved in a day, but the mere demonstration that it is committed is worth commending, and it is worth giving a further chance for him to continue the work that it has started.
Well, viewers, we're going to take a short break. We are talking to Appiah Kubi, who is the National Democratic Congress parliamentary candidate for Akuapem. We're trying to find out what the problems in Akuapem are, why he's interested in contesting the seats and several other issues. But we're going to go on a short break. When we come back, I'd like you to address one particular problem. The problem of electricity supply in Mampong. Because I'm told that it's been quite erratic and so on. So when we come back, I'd like you to address that. Short break.
For over 20 years, Citylight has brightened your world. We give our customers value for money. It's no wonder Citylight is still the preferred choice. Citylight is the one-stop shop for conduit fittings, cables, switches, lights and wiring accessories. Now open in Takoradi, Citylight, the ultimate in lighting.
Well, welcome back to Talk Time, and we are in conversation with Appiah Kubi, who is the parliamentary candidate to the National Democratic Congress for the Kropong constituency. Now, just before we went on the break, I raised the issue of the electricity supply situation in Mampong. Friends of mine tell me that the people of Mampong are experiencing a low current. Is that true? And if that is true, what is government doing about it?
Well, I have also had similar concerns, and when they came up, I think I made follow-ups to the appropriate quarters, engaging the local assembly, engaging the district manager for the Ghana Electricity Company. And I was told that there are areas where to start with, because of the traffic that is coming up the ridge and the numerous projects that is ongoing. Sometimes there are facilities like hotels, there are facilities like institutions and so on that have these new gadgets and new appliances that require certain sub-transformers to be installed. One of the things we found out was that many people come, they put up these structures and not consult the ECG, and so they suffer from these low voltages because they need certain sub-transformers for those neighborhoods. The other issue had to do with the general situation about the network for the Kwesi Ridge. I mean, previously we used to rely on the same network from Adenta all the way to through the ridge down to Dodowa and then up. And so whatever happens in any of the communities, along the ridge, it affects people in Kwesi because of how long the network was. But I've been told that there are a lot of sub-networks that are substations that are being created now. Now the company is trying to tap from Nsawem up to Ebri, and we have a new substation at Obosmase now. We are also being told that the ECG is working on maintaining the Adenta line and then one from Dodowa side. And so I think that around the time that we were getting some of these challenges also, there were a lot of works ongoing, and so things were being test run and so on. But I think now there's been a major stability in terms of electricity supply, and the situation has significantly improved.
Does Latte have specific, peculiar problems? Latte?
Yes, Latte does have a specific challenge. You know, because of the geography of Kwesi, Latte is up the hills again. And so one of the major concerns of Latte is water supply, because when I made follow-ups to the Ghana Water Company, they need to install special boosters for the pressures to be able to get up the Latte hills. And so Latte rely mainly on natural water bodies. Not long ago, the government came to Sanga about 5 boreholes for the community. That is not enough because Latte is quite a huge community. And so water is a major need. The other need has to do with the access roads and so on, because it's not on the main stretch. Usually the kind of maintenance that ought to be given, it's not given. Generally, it also suffers from the issues about employment for the youth. It also suffers from their own chieftaincy issues sometimes. And I think generally they have also benefited from the share of the national cake in terms of the support that has gone into institutions in Latte. Not long ago, the Latte PSTS, which needed land because of the expansion, where the school started from, needed some land to expand. The government is giving them about, I think, 500 acres from the local assemblies land that it acquired so that the school can expand into that area. And so it's also suffering from the scramble of land because of its closeness to Accra and the fact that the land cost is going up and natives cannot afford. But that's a general trend that I'm sure could be addressed from time.
What about Obosmasi? Obosmasi is part of the constituency?
Yes, Obosmasi is part of the constituency.
Yeah,
Obosmasi is on the main stretch. And so I think they've also benefited from the improvement in the water supply that is as a result of the Pong water expansion project. Obosmasi equally suffers from the scramble for land. The issue about education, Obosmasi has its basic infrastructure, basic educations in place. It doesn't have a secondary school, but of course not all the smaller towns can have secondary schools and so on. But Obosmasi is fairly okay. There's a need for jobs for some of the young people, and that is one of the things that when you enter the community keeps coming up. I'm sure that with the government's programs that it has underway, when you look at the manifesto of the party and what government intends doing, I'm sure that they will benefit in due course.
Yeah. Now you're going to go into Parliament, and you do recognize that Parliament is a law-making institution. How do you see Parliament affecting development in the nation generally and in your constituency in particular? How can the work of Parliament as a legislative body impact on development?
Well, to start with, I think that as a country, we have come to accept democracy. And the basis of democracy is law. And if Parliament is a law-making body, then that creates the legal framework for even development to triumph. So it is important because a lot of legislature in terms of programs and policy and so on ought to come through Parliament. And I think that it will have to take into consideration some of